Hey everyone, in today's video, I want to take you through the mindset of a US employer that's considering petitioning a foreign worker for a green card. And by doing so, I want to help you better understand some of the struggles that a US employer would go through, which would make them think twice about going through this whole process of petitioning for somebody's green card by giving them a full-time job offer. After that, we'll go through some potential solutions and some potential workarounds that could eliminate some of these concerns that a US employer would have. So first and foremost, the way the employer-sponsored green card process works, also referred to as the PERM process in some cases, the way it works is that the employer has to go through a number of steps procedurally. It's not a straightforward process for an employer. They have to file an application with the Department of Labor that explains what type of role they're hiring for, specifically where the person will be working, what the title of the job is, what the job duties are, what the experience is that's required. They have to put this meticulous, essentially, application together to submit to the Department of Labor, for the Department of Labor to come back to them with a particular wage for that position. That's called the prevailing wage request. The US employer has to offer that amount or more to the foreign worker. Now they have to go through that step. After that's done, they have to go through recruitment efforts. They have to show that they tried to hire a US worker and that they were unable to find a qualified US worker for the position. And after that, they have to file another application, and there's even more applications after that. So the process, it can be very daunting to a US employer that's considering this. Now, if that wasn't already enough, the employer has to pay for certain components of the legal fees. So this process that I discussed with you, the PERM process, where the employer has to specify what the job is, conduct the recruitment, and file the PERM application with the Department of Labor, that whole process, the legal fees associated with it, have to be paid by the employer. Not only do they have to go through this complex process, the legal fees cannot come from the foreign worker. So there's that aspect to it. Now let's think about the timeline. The employer-sponsored green card process typically takes 2 or more years. Now, if you're a US employer and you're considering sponsoring somebody for their green card by giving them a job offer, do you think you're gonna know what your employment needs are gonna be 2 years into the future? I mean, in many cases you will, but you can imagine that there are many employers that simply don't know specifically whether they're going to have a need for this position 2 years from now. So there's that aspect of it as well, where there is a very long processing time that can also make an employer think twice before deciding to go through with this process. Now, that brings me to my next reason why an employer could potentially think twice about deciding to sponsor a foreign worker for their green card. Let's say that the employer goes through this whole process. They do all these procedural things, they post the job ads, they do the recruitment, they do the whole process with the Department of Labor, and all the steps that are required in this process. And on top of that, they paid the legal fees for this process and the various costs that go into it. And on top of that, they wait years to get to the point where the employee can actually begin working for the company. Well, once they get their green card and once they work for that employer, is that employee bound to work for that employer? No. If that employee decides, you know what, I don't like this job anymore, I don't really want to do it, they can quit. The employee is not bound to that employer once they get their green card. Now, you're a US employer, put yourself in their shoes. They have to go through this daunting process, bear all these expenses, and once the employee gets the green card at the end of the day, they are not bound to work for that employer. Ultimately, it's even more risk for the employer. That's one of the reasons. If you find yourself struggling to find an employer that's willing to petition for you, those issues that I just mentioned are among the reasons why. Whereas the employer could potentially have a much easier time just hiring a US worker for the position. So this brings me to my next aspect of this video, which is to discuss potential ways that you can overcome some of these challenges that many foreign workers face. Well, essentially what it comes down to, and how many foreign employees and foreign workers have had an easier time securing employment in the United States, is to ultimately reduce the risk to the US employer. And one very common path that I've seen many foreign workers have success with is to essentially go step by step. And what I mean by that is the employee would potentially be in the United States on an F1 student visa. And through their F1 student visa, they might have some form of employment authorization called OPT. So they may potentially start with an employer through their OPT, which requires very minimal effort on the part of the employer. Again, the employee will start in a smaller capacity, basically working for the US company under their OPT. Then the employer has a chance to kind of feel out the employee and understand whether there is a good work relationship there. The employer can essentially determine whether this employee is somebody that they want to stick around with their company for years to come. Now, at some point during the OPT period, the employer then may decide that they want to sponsor the employee under an H-1B visa, which is again a simpler process than the green card process that we highlighted earlier. So the employer then might decide, okay, let's move forward with an H-1B visa. And through the H-1B visa, there's also the potential for the employee to work for that employer for a number of years. Again, giving the employer a chance to develop that comfort level with this employee over several years before they're deciding to commit to the green card. And again, let's say after a period of time, the US employer has now had a more long-standing work relationship with the employee. At that point, the employee has even more ability to demonstrate their value to the company, and the employer is in more of a position to realize that this is somebody that they certainly want to be around for the long term. And then at that point, they may decide and be more willing to agree to sponsor the foreign worker for a green card through the perm process that we highlighted earlier. So again, earlier in this video, we talked about some challenges regarding the procedural hurdles of sponsoring somebody for a green card, the costs that are involved, and the risk that the employer undertakes. So again, one potential solution that I have seen many foreign workers have success with is to essentially build step by step with that employer and essentially reduce the risk that that employer feels that they are undertaking. The roadmap that I've seen many employees, foreign workers, have success with is to start off working with the employer under something like an F1 OPT, and then from there transition to an H-1B non-immigrant visa, and then at that point pursue their employer-sponsored green card. This is just one roadmap of many. In many cases, there may be a situation where the employer already has that comfort level and they already determined that they want to proceed with the employee, regardless of the risks involved. And that could very well be the case as well. But again, my purpose for this video was to just put you in the shoes of a US employer to help you better understand their calculations when they're determining whether to sponsor somebody for a green card, and again, to offer you a solution. I hope you found this video helpful. If you know anybody that could benefit from this information, please feel free to share with them. As always, thank you so much for tuning into the video. I'll see you on the next one.